Live from the News Hub here at Adesawe Kanda in Accra. This is News at 10 on TV3 and 3FM 92.7. We are also streaming live on our Facebook page and on 3news.com. Let's first begin the day with the day's major news highlights. A 5-member committee will investigate alleged abuse of power and corruption scandal that has rocked the Electoral Commission. This was after a prima facie case was established by the Chief Justice, TV3 has learned. The committee is expected to investigate the EC chairperson, Charlotte Tessé, together with her 2 deputies. And the Supreme Court has rejected an order by the African Court of Human and People's Rights to halt proceedings in the case the government is seeking to retrieve an amount of 51 million cedis judgment debt wrongfully paid businessman Alfred Agbeshi Woyome. The Apex Court maintained its powers and laws were largely independent from the influence of other bodies, whether local or international. And shocking revelations from the 2017 Afro Barometer show religious and traditional leaders are leading the pack as highly corrupt public officials. Although the police and judiciary are ranked the most corrupt institutions in Ghana, the inclusion of religious and traditional leaders in the top 10 of the country's corruption perception ratings raises critical concerns. And U.S. Ambassador to Ghana, Robert Jackson, has expressed confidence in policies and reforms introduced by government to fight corruption in the public sector. He called for aggressive action to be taken to deal effectively with the canker and ensure a corruption-free society. Those are our major news highlights. Remember, we're live on 3FM 92.7 and streaming also on Facebook and on 3news.com. Up next is the big one. Welcome back. Now, the Supreme Court has rejected an order by the African Court of Human and People's Rights to halt proceedings in the case it is seeking to retrieve an amount of 51 million cedis judgment debt wrongfully paid businessman Alfred Woyome. The Apex Court maintained its powers and laws were largely independent from the influence of other bodies, whether local or international.
The 5 justices presided over by Justice Donsdoche said the Ghanaian Supreme Court had no factual and legal basis to share its powers and jurisdiction with any other court, be it local or international. The Supreme Court justices further dismissed an application for stay of proceeding pending the final outcome of the case before the African Court by Alfred Woyome. Delivering their judgment on the issue, the justices described the said application as one which lacks substance and merit. The African Court on Human and People's Rights in Arusha, Tanzania, on November 24 ordered Ghana to suspend processes aimed at retrieving the 51.2 million until the African Court determines an appeal filed by the businessman who argues that his human rights are being abused by Ghana's Supreme Court. In a unanimous ruling, the 11-member panel ordered Ghana to suspend the seizure of any property belonging to the businessman, take all appropriate measures to maintain the status quo, and avoid the property being sold until the case was determined. The businessman proceeded to the African Human Rights Court when government began evaluation of his properties in an attempt to retrieve the 51 million cedis wrongfully paid to him in a judgment debt. Deputy Attorney General Godfred Dame, after proceedings, expressed shock at the ruling from the African Court, adding that they were not served to enter an appearance.
The ruling of the African Court was a surprise to us. There was no hearing whatsoever. There was no notification to us of the proceeding. All that had been done was a motion filed by them. We had also filed our affidavit in opposition. And then there were no further representations whatsoever. So it actually came out of the blue. And if you look at the ruling of the African Court itself, it's indicated that they were represented and we were not represented. So how come they were represented and we were not represented? You think that something went amiss, something fishy?
The Deputy AG said government will go ahead to attach the assets and properties of the businessman after this ruling.
And it's again the same Constitution, Article 2, Clauses 3 and 4, also directs that any decision or order of the Supreme Court must be duly obeyed and carried out. And it even sets out consequences which border on crime. So if a person unduly delays, resort to subterfuge, plots, and ploys as this to evade judgment of the Supreme Court, that person's conduct is actually bordering on the commission of a crime. So let him go on and enjoy himself, but of course, definitely he will hit the wall.
Right, let's get on to Skype now and speak with Justice Srem Sai, who is a law lecturer at GIMPO Law School. He's joining us via Skype now. Good evening, sir, and thank you. We're extremely grateful for your time.
Good evening.
Now, Article 129, subsection 2 of the 1992 Constitution clearly states that the Supreme Court shall not be bound to follow the decision of any other court. Now, what I want to find out is that as the final appeals court, final court of appeal, would the Supreme Court in this case be bound by the order of the African Human Rights Court?
Thank you very much. I think we need to take a step back and consider the power of the Supreme Court. Indeed, the Supreme Court is the final judicial authority in Ghana. However, we know very well that the Supreme Court exercises that power in accordance with the Constitution. So, being the final arbiter or final judicial authority does not automatically mean that the court can do as it pleases. The court ought to act in accordance with the law. Now, what is this law that we are discussing within the context? We know that government is divided into 3 departments. So we have the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. These departments have their respective roles to play. The court's job is to interpret the law, but Article 75 of the Constitution gives the executive the power to enter into international agreements or treaties with other states or other international organizations. Now, when the executive enters into such agreement, Parliament has a role to play to make the agreement, binding internally. But that role, and I want to stress on this, that role has no say when it comes to Ghana's relationship with its partners at the international level. So, for example, in this case, the fact that Ghana has signed up, or the executive has signed up to the protocol that established the African Court, is conclusive as far as the other parties to the protocol is concerned. In other words, the other African countries. Whether the executive comes to Ghana to pass it into an act in accordance with our constitution is inconsequential as far as the international community is concerned. And that is where the issue becomes a bit complex. But let's get the facts right. My knowledge of what happened in court today, and I think I should put this on record before we proceed further, is that the Supreme Court, the panel of 5, did not consider the Human Rights Court's order. And I can imagine the reason. Because first of all, the order is not directed at the Supreme Court. Because the African Human Rights Court cannot make an order directing our Supreme Court. Because there is no direct legal relationship between them. The direct legal relationship exists between the executive, represented by the Attorney General, the Foreign Ministry, the President, and the international community. So if you read the order carefully, the order says what the state, and by the state we are referring to the government, to stop, all processes leading to confiscation of the assets of the applicant, pending the determination of the matter before the court. I'm wondering the circumstances that will lead the court at this time to start questioning the order which is directed at the executive. Well, I don't know what motivated the Deputy Attorney General to actually inform the public.
So Justice Sai, let me ask a follow-up question. I mean, under the circumstances, with the explanations you've given us, what should be the role, or maybe I should put it that way, how should the Supreme Court conduct itself in ensuring that this order is adhered to? Does it have the powers to do so?
Indeed, the Supreme Court of Ghana has the power to do so, to ensure that the order it has given for the confiscation be complied with. But the court is also made up of prominent judges who have the understanding of these principles that I've outlined, who know very well that there is a relationship between the executive arm of government and the international community, who know that a court, Ghana cannot, use its domestic laws to excuse its international obligation. So I believe if the matter were properly put before the court and arguments taken, I doubt if the court will say just that they are not bound and then go ahead to do what they want to do. What is going on is just like an interim injunction. If you have a decision in the Supreme Court can make an order saying that, look, stop everything you are doing until we decide the matter. It's not even, in fact, this issue is not even a big issue as far as, the issue, the subject matter of this case is concerned. So I am particularly surprised how the Deputy Attorney General, put the issue out there.
So whose fault is it that we are where we are today?
I think that we don't need to allocate blames, and the answer I'm going to give is not with the intention of allocating blames. What I'm going to say is just to outline who has the duty to get certain things done. I have listened to the Deputy Attorney General, and he seemed to suggest that even though Ghana has, signed up to these international treaties, so long as they have not been ratified by Parliament, they have not been, passed by Parliament into law, it is ineffective. Then the question then is, whose job is it to get these things, these instruments, ratified? Obviously, it's the job of the person making this argument, which is the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General. So let me give you a history to this instrument. In 1989, Ghana signed up to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. In 2005, when His Excellency, the current president, was the foreign minister, and the current Attorney General was the Deputy Attorney General, Ghana signed up to the protocol which established this court, committing the Republic of Ghana to be bound by the decisions of this court. Further, in 2011, Ghana made another deposition of an instrument which says that individuals like Mr. Woyome, you and I, could actually sue Ghana before the court, and the decision of the court will be binding. Now, my question is, if we did not, were we, excuse my language, joking when we were signing up with this? So I don't think the view of the Deputy Attorney General is the view of the authorities in Ghana. I believe his superiors, that is the Attorney General, is very experienced in some of these things, the President himself, and they are very fantastic lawyers and international law relations, persons at the Foreign Affairs Ministry. And I believe if proper consultation was done, we probably will be hearing some of these arguments that we heard today, that the Supreme Court is not bound and that the decision of the African Human Rights Court has no force in Ghana. It is, I think it's a very questionable view of the law. It actually, rejects the broader view of international law. It limits itself strictly to, it's a very limited view of what the position of the law is and should be revised as soon as possible.
And in the position of the law, Justice Sai, before you go, in the position of the law, does it look like a dead end for Mr. Woyome?
Well, like I said, this is a small issue. Actually, it's a small issue. I don't know why it's become so important. It's a small issue and cannot be a dead end to Mr. Williams, because when I look at the generality of the law and how things are going, I have no doubt that at this point, Mr. Williams would just have to probably sit and cross his leg and wait for the substantive decision on the matter pending before the African court. I don't think the proper way to go, or the way to go for Ghana, is the way the Deputy Attorney General is prescribing. I think the lawful way to go is to hold on and for international respect, for international reputation. You know, we have built a country over decades to become the beacon of hope for Africa as a country of rule of law rather than rule of men. And I think arguments like the one we heard today from the Deputy Attorney General would go a long way to derogate from this reputation that we've gained over the years. We are here putting people out as international tribunal judges. We have reputable persons who have sat in some of these courts, including our Chief Justice, Justice Benning, who is at the Supreme Court, that sat on the ECOWAS court. We are known for respect for international human rights law and international law. I do not think that the suggestion put forward today by the Deputy Attorney General would in any way do us any good. It is actually inimical to our reputation, and it's more expensive than probably the money we are even chasing.
Right. Justice Sai, we're grateful extremely for your time. Thank you very much. Justice Srem Sai is a law lecturer at GIMPO Law School. Away from that, a 5-member committee will investigate alleged abuse of power and corruption scandal that has rocked the Electoral Commission. This was after a prima facie case was established by the Chief Justice, TV3 has learned. The committee is expected to investigate the EC chairperson, Charlotte Say, together with her 2 deputies.
The committee, to be presided over by Supreme Court judge, has 2 other Court of Appeal judges as well as 2 other members nominated by the Council of State. Both the judiciary and the Council of State are set to have nominated their respective representatives. As a result, the impeachment proceedings have become imminent. The commission made headlines last July after some unnamed staff petitioned the president to trigger impeachment processes. The accusation included some 3.9 million cedis to petition and offers the receipt of a Toyota Land Cruiser from the Mahama government, the expenditure of about $14 million when the Public Procurement Authority had authorized her to use only $7.5 million. A second petition from a private citizen, Douglas Seidu, followed in August, and the president referred it to the Chief Justice on August 29. The grounds outlined in the petition include financial misconduct, incompetence, conflict of interest, breaches of the public procurement processes, among others. It remains unclear when the committee will commence sitting.
This is still news at 10. We'll be right back. Please stay. Welcome back. Now, shocking revelations from the 2017 Afro Barometer indicate religious and traditional leaders are leading the pack as highly corrupt public officials. Although the police and the judiciary are ranked the most corrupt institutions in Ghana, the inclusion of the religious and traditional leaders in the top 10 of the country's corruption perceptions ratings is raising critical concerns.
Religious and traditional leaders remain revered within the Ghanaian socio-cultural setting, but there is a growing perception the church is losing the trust of the people it serves.
In the past, religious institutions were deemed sacrosanct, unblemished, and free from sin. Many ran to the mosques and churches like this one for salvation after sin. But people's perception about religious leaders, and for that matter the church, is gradually changing.
The 2017 Afro Barometer survey report shows 57% of Ghanaians believe religious leaders are corrupt. Similarly, over 50% of Ghanaians think traditional leaders are corrupt. The Center for Democratic Development, CDD, is the source of this startling revelation.
Traditional leaders topped in terms of the non-state institutions or informal sectors or institutions of our country. And then we also saw the religious leaders also being that. We have seen and heard a lot of stories regarding some religious leaders, the affluent nature of religious leaders, traditional leaders, involvements in land sale and resale, even galamsey and all of those things. And I suspect that some of these issues may have informed Ghanaians to perceive these groups of people as being corrupt.
This year's Afro Barometer focuses on 4 thematic areas: corruption, political vigilantism, mob injustice, immigration, and illegal mining. The report is warning more Ghanaians, especially the youth, harbor plans of leaving the country to seek greener pastures.
What we are showing today suggests that there are a group of Ghanaians who are actually getting ready to leave the shores of this country. And what is so interesting is that they see North America and Europe as the destinations, not even within the African continent.
On illegal mining, the report indicated about 80% of Ghanaians support government's policy on illegal mining. That notwithstanding, stakeholders want stiffer punishments to be meted to illegal miners.
We're calling on the Chief Justice and we're calling on the Honorable Attorney General that they need to look into this so that they make sure that people know that when I do this thing, one, there's a certainty that I'll be arrested, that is a deterrent, and also the fact that the punishment that would come will be deterring enough and people will not want to engage in that.
The Afro Barometer also highlighted political vigilantism and mob injustice as a growing culture that must be nipped in the bud. A former commissioner of Shraj, Justice Emil Short, noted concentrated powers in the hands of the president in the appointment of an IGP is a disincentive for the police to enforce the law without fear.
The police find it difficult to deal with people who are engaged in political acts, criminal acts, because they are afraid of the repercussions. And that also goes back to the whole appointment process.
The 2017 Afro Barometer is a development index that seeks to guide government's policy direction.
Meanwhile, the Speaker of Parliament has summoned the Roads and Highways Minister, Kwesi Amoakwata, over the seeming chaos that has characterized the closure of the Bupe-Yape Bridge. The minister is expected to brief the House on measures taken so far to resolve the problem come Thursday.
The minority leader Haruna Idrisi prompted the Speaker on the difficulties travellers who plied the road were going through.
Mr. Speaker, the closure of the 2 bridges at Bupe and Yape is affecting the movement of goods and passengers, resulting in some untold hardship. Mr. Speaker, we would want to invite the Minister for Roads to further brief this House what contingency measures he put in place before the announcement of the closure, and what is it that he is doing to ameliorate the suffering of the many persons who want to travel from the north to the south, taking advantage of other routes.
This was seconded by the majority side.
Information available to the leadership of our side shows that it's a serious issue at Cabinet, and then the minister will be here to appropriately brief the House as to measures that they are putting in place to ease movement.
Meanwhile, the government has secured a loan to refurbish all Ghana missions abroad.
And the Ministry of Health has given the medical director of the Akan Psychiatric Hospital, Dr. Eugene Dodoe, 3 months to be of good behavior or face the consequences. The ministry has also directed for an audit of the hospital's accounts to ascertain the veracity of allegations of financial mismanagement leveled against him.
The medical director of the Akan Psychiatric Hospital, Dr. Eugene Dodoe, has come under severe criticism for bad human relations and mismanagement of resources. Nurses at the Akan Psychiatric Hospital in the Central Region have laid down their tools in an attempt to compel government to remove the director from post. They also accused him of maladministration and showing gross disrespect two subordinates, but the Ministry of Health, following a meeting with the nurses, refused to remove the embattled director. According to the ministry, removing him without warning would set a bad precedence.
It's asked them to be patient with him. He's given the man additional 3 months and see whether he will change for the better, because most of the allegations border on his behavior and attitude. But after these 3 months, if he continues the same way, then a decision will be taken on that. But the last 3 border on maybe misapplication of funds and some purchases which, according to them, were not done right. That one, some investigations will be conducted. Not even investigations, yeah, some auditing work will be done. So when it's found out that he's done anything wrong, then the law will take its course.
Dr. Dodoe has already apologized to the staff in a 4-page letter, admitting that the approach he used in attempting to implement his reforms may have angered the staff.
And that's it for News at 10. Thanks for staying. I'm Stephen Enti. There is more news at 3news.com. On behalf of the crew here, good night.